Alright, what's going on, guys? I've been playing Elden Ring for about 4 days straight now, and my original plan was for my first video post-release to be my review and thoughts on the game. However, after all this time of literal non-stop play, I think I'm barely over halfway done. But to give you guys an overview of my thoughts already, this game is perfect. This is the game I've always wanted. And that might sound corny and it might have a little bit of recency bias, but as of right now, those are my true feelings about the game. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're gonna delve into the world of Twitter drama and find the biggest reason people are complaining about Elden Ring. And it's probably not what you were expecting, because the typical complaints we were expecting pre-release were things like the game being too hard and not being accessible and so on. However, the straw that broke the camel's back is apparently the game not having a quest log. And if you're a longtime Souls fan, that might sound kinda weird to you, because of course the game doesn't have a quest log. The game doesn't even have quests, at least in the traditional sense. But I believe this Twitter discourse gives us a great opportunity to talk about Elden Ring's quest in general, because that's one thing I'm absolutely loving about the game so far. But with all that, let me get you up to date on what happened here. A few days ago on the release of Elden Ring, popular game journalist Jason Schreier was giving his thoughts and general review about the game, and everything he had to say was overwhelmingly positive, but there was one point in particular that drove people crazy, and I'll just read you the tweet. If you plan on playing Elden Ring, here's a big tip. Have a journal. You can put markers on the map, but there's no quest log or NPC appendix, and you'll find it very helpful to keep track of where and who wants what. Now that's gotta be one of the most tame and appropriate tips I've ever seen about a Fromsoftware game. When I saw that tweet for the first time, my thoughts instantly were, oh, that's a great idea, I'm actually gonna do that. Because I've played all the Souls games before, and one of the biggest things that always goes wrong on my first playthroughs is that I forget about my NPCs. And if you're someone that's never played the Souls games before and Elden Ring is your first crack at it, these games don't have quests in the traditional sense. What a quest in a Souls game looks like is an NPC having their own storyline that will naturally progress as you progress through the game. Your actions are not the most driving factor behind NPC storylines. However, the storylines can be influenced by you, especially at their endings, and you can miss NPC storylines. And let me give you a quick example of what I mean by that. There's a character in the game named Alexander, the big pot boy that you've probably seen a million times. He has an entire storyline that will progress through the game as you do naturally. You can find him early on and begin that storyline, and take the path where you have your own actions influencing it, but even if you don't, that storyline will still continue throughout the game. Because in my playthrough, I never found Alexander. I never actually started his storyline, but about halfway through the game, he showed up, where he was at a late point on his storyline without me taking any actions. Now of course there are NPCs that completely rely on you to progress their storyline, and a few big ones that can change the course of your entire playthrough, but the ones like that are few and far between. However, those are the only quote-unquote quests that the game has. But after this tweet went out, it went kind of viral, and we're going to take a look at a lot of the responses starting with this one. Maybe the game should have included an actual quest log in-game. You should not need to keep a physical journal for a freaking video game. It's clear that the person writing this response really doesn't understand how the storylines work for the NPCs in Elden Ring. A quest log in-game that points you to the next step in a storyline would completely destroy the nature of these storylines in-game, and let me explain why. The primary selling point of the Souls games in Elden Ring is the satisfaction you receive after overcoming a difficult challenge by your own ability. The NPC storylines work the same way. They're not there to tell an intricate and deep story, although they are very interesting. Their primary purpose is that they're tools to get you to understand the world more and immerse you further. I've done several of the storylines in my playthrough of Elden Ring so far, and I would say only about half gave you a direction of where to go to progress the next step. The majority of the time, if I wanted to progress an NPC storyline, it didn't happen because I actively sought them out. It happened because something else in the game gave me a context clue that related to the purpose of the NPC. For example, early on in the game you might run into a character who says he's hunting those that remain after death, and he warns you not to go any further because beyond the point he's guarding lies a powerful undead. Now, that's all he says. He doesn't tell you to go kill it, but if you choose to and you try to return to him, he'll be gone. Now, the game knows that it doesn't give you a direction, but instead what happens is that the character goes to a place that you'll naturally run into him again. And if you chose to kill the undead, it drops a proof that you can show him and progress his storyline. Now, this character has his own story But as you're playing through the game, you'll find other NPCs that know that character, and because you found him and progressed his storyline, their storylines also take a turn, and their stories play out differently based on who you find and who you don't. You are not meant to complete every quest in this game. It's literally impossible to do in one playthrough, because the storylines play out differently based on your actions that you choose to take organically. So you might be starting to pick up why a quest log wouldn't work here, because the characters don't give you direction. Sometimes they might tell you where they're off to next, but the majority of the time they'll tell you their purpose and ambition, and it's your job to further understand the world and figure out where that might lead them to next. And when you do, it's a rush of satisfaction, because you solved the mystery, and in doing so, you learned a lot more about the world. And it was at those times in the game that I became the most immersed and got the most hooked in my playthrough. And if the game had a quest log telling you where exactly to go in each step, you would lose the primary purpose behind these quest lines. But with that in mind, let's look at a few more responses. So instead of making it optional, it just doesn't exist? Nah, that's a negative it gets. Give me one good reason the game doesn't have quest log option with the default off. So as I explained before, the majority of NPC storylines in Elden Ring are meant to unfold naturally as you make your organic decisions throughout your playthrough, and that includes unfolding differently based on the things you miss. So if the game did have a quest log, then naturally you would want to go out and pursue those. The NPC storylines have multiple endings and multiple ways to make them unfold, including not completing their steps. So if the game had a quest log, the storylines would no longer be organic, and they're literally made in a way that accommodates you not knowing what to do. And if you did know what to do, you would lose about half of that storyline. So that's one reason it would be a negative, but let's move on to another response. That's terrible for some cognitive disabilities, people who can't alt-tab, or simply anyone who takes a break and returns to the game really surprised. Here's why that's not true. As I said before, a majority of the NPC storyline events rely on things that you would do naturally and organically, which includes missing a step. The quests are not meant to be completed perfectly, and so if these people do miss steps, that's okay. That's how it was supposed to happen for them. And if they want to go out and seek quest lines, all they have to do is go explore. They're really not that hard to understand. And like I said several times throughout the game, the character will tell you exactly where to go. And so just because you don't get a giant red marker on the map doesn't mean you're now incapable of doing it. What these people don't realize is that the intended experience of the game is that you're going to miss some things. And because of this, it adds to the replayability of the game. Like I said, it's literally impossible to complete all of the quest lines in one playthrough, and some can only be completed if you miss the steps of others. And if the game had a quest log, it would completely undermine the organic feeling of the way the events unfold. But guys, that's going to pretty much wrap up my thoughts on the matter. I hope I've made it plain to see why the game should not have a quest log. And I think the people that are complaining about this the most really don't understand the nature of how this game works. And I think if they did decide to play the game, they would really figure out how this obtusivity actually makes it a better experience. But guys, that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.